Have you ever found yourself at a roadblock with Dungeons and Dragons? Maybe you've thought about becoming a dungeon master or a game master, and you're not really sure what that entails. Or maybe even you've thought about what class may be the strongest and why they are the strongest.
And maybe you've played every class of Dungeons and Dragons, but you haven't played every subclass and you've overlooked some. Or maybe that new interesting character that you've daydreamed about for weeks isn't as fun to play in game. Here at Theoretical Insights of D&D, me and Rob are going to be discussing some insights and theories of Dungeons and Dragons. So let's get ready
And roll for insight.
Crit Theory. I'm Jeremiah.
And I'm Rob.
And here at Crit Theory, every roll is critical, especially the rolls at Thanksgiving dinner.
I don't think I've ever had a Thanksgiving dinner without rolls.
Yeah.
They are really critical.
They are critical to the Thanksgiving dinner.
Put a little butter on top.
You want to know what I like most about Thanksgiving dinners? There's so many options, and I can customize my plate any way. If I want mashed potatoes, I got 5 different ones to choose from. Especially, I got a big family, man. I got lots of cousins. We got 3 different types of mac and cheese, 4 different types of meat. I'm talking ham, turkey, pork. I know ham and pork come from the same animal, but it's from different parts, different meats in my book.
And the thing is not every family does turkey on Thanksgiving. Some do barbecue, some do steaks, everything. It's unlimited customization.
I had lasagna on Thanksgiving here at your house. You remember that?
Yeah, and it was pretty good.
It was pretty good. I'd never had lasagna for Thanksgiving, but I customized my plate, have that lasagna on it.
And there's our icebreaker to get into the customization for D&D 5e.
Now, customization is, we talked about the fighter class, and we finished all the subclasses as of this point.
Yeah, we talked about how versatile it is, but we didn't get into the customization options you can do, and this is going to be covering anything you can do with just about any class or race.
Yeah. One thing that is a staple of any RPG game is the ability to customize your character.
And we're not talking about just cosmetically, because you can go off the wall with cosmetic stuff.
Mm-hmm. We're talking
Playability.
Abilities, how tough you are, how much damage you do, skills, attributes, all that. But there is a section in the player's handbook that is chapter 6 on page 163, I believe.
Yeah.
Customization options.
Now, before we get too into it, I will say there are certain customizations that you can do to any race, any class. You have to be careful, though, because some may not make sense. You want to try and get it to what's going to be best for your character. Now, you can always lead that and kind of take it by a lead and lead it down whatever road you want to do. But at the end of the day, you got to look at it, make sure it's going to work for the character, because otherwise it just won't make sense and it may not work.
Well, also, you can go about that route, but...
Or you can just do whatever you want.
That's the beauty about D&D. I can make a character who's got a good backstory, real in depth, very emotional, and tugged at the strings of the heart. Or I could just make a guy that I just want him to do like some crazy stuff.
Yeah.
You know? Now, 5e has changed from previous editions, and I know we're both not as experienced as other players out there, but the first ever D&D game I did play, and I played one session of it, was 3.5. And there was some restrictions, if I'm remembering correctly. I do know that older editions, they have clerics could only use blunt weapons. They couldn't use sharp weapons. Some races couldn't be certain classes.
Yeah.
And then 5e came out, and the restrictions of building your character,
They pretty much disappeared.
There are still some.
You only find it in the feats more often than not. And I'm not sure if any of those feats are in the player's handbook or if that's stuff that's come out in Tasha's or Xanathar's.
I think it's Xanathar's, the racial feats.
Yeah, there's some you have to be a dwarf for, some you have to be a dragonborn, and some you have to be a tiefling.
Yeah. I will say, one of the restrictions that first popped out of my mind was druids. They can't wear metal.
Yeah.
As of the player's handbook stating. I'm not sure if they've changed that in any new recent books.
Not as far as I know.
Some other restrictions that they recently changed up was the orc and kobold. If if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, orcs used to have a negative to their intelligence.
Have a -1 modifier.
Yeah, after some backlash from the community over on the West Coast, they decided to do away with the -2 intelligence, and I think they gave them a plus to con along with their plus to strength.
They had the plus. They had the strength and the con already, and they had the -1 intelligence.
Or maybe they just took the minus intelligence
Yeah,
off. I
and
haven't looked at it in a while.
me either. But then again, kobolds, they had a -1 to strength. And, from the fantasy viewer standpoint, yeah, that makes sense. Orcs usually aren't shown as being smart, but with the way that the culture and media and games are going right now, there's a lot of trope breaking in all types, in movies, TV shows, in games.
Pretty much, yeah. It's gotten to the point to where creators are giving the people of the games that they've made almost unlimited accessibility to the customization options, making it as free as possible. Because you take something like Kingdoms of Amalur, where you had the 3 trees that you could go down. You can mix and match some to be a strong spellcaster, a tank, or maybe just the kind of roguish type that could do high damage but really couldn't take any, and compare it to something like Oblivion and Skyrim, which Oblivion came out before it did. There's so much more customization options, both cosmetically, gameplay-wise. And when it comes down to the mods that have been released, obviously some have been backed up by Bethesda and some have not. But they've allowed more to be put out to where you can customize as much as you can. And Bethesda has backed a lot of those mods, saying, yes, if you want to play this and have a flying horse, please do so.
Yeah. Just back in topic of like customization, there's a few subclass restrictions. I think Bladesinger, the wizard subclass, you have to be an elf to play it, and the barbarian and battle rager, you have to be a dwarf. And those do make sense in like a world building context because they're like blade singing is, I believe, like in the lore is only taught to elves, and then the battle raging technique is like specific to dwarfs. But 5e really has made it to where you can pretty much do anything.
Yeah, and even going into a kind of a race restriction, we've already talked about the Arcane Archer subclass for the fighter, and in its subclass, it is stated as an Elven Art. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't play an Arcane Archer that's a human, kobold, whatever. Maybe you just hung out with elves, like Aragorn did.
Yeah. Now, I know a lot of DMs who like just look at the restrictions and be like, nah, we don't play the way of that. You can be an orc blade singer.
Yeah.
And it goes from game to game. Me personally, I don't like a whole lot of restrictions for my players. I'll be like, listen, you ain't got to worry about that.
Yeah, but there are some that are in place for a reason.
I will say that I did let Michael, he was on our show not too long ago.
Yeah,
he played
a second fighter episode.
He played a centaur in my game where you played Philip Von T.
Mm-hmm.
And he actually took the racial feat where you had to be a tiefling. Because when those racial feats came out, D&D Beyond did not restrict them.
Yep.
You didn't have to be a certain race to add it onto your character right away. Which, I can see the restrictions, but also I like my characters, I like my players to have more abilities.
Yeah.
Me personally. That's just kind of like my style as a DM. And this is a great segue into multi-classing, because me as a DM, I do not like multi-classing prerequisites.
Prerequisites, no. To a certain extent, I don't like multi-classing, period.
I can see that.
To a certain extent.
Like, you don't have to... One of the things that I don't like about it is, one, I don't like being limited.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing that I want holding me back is a seatbelt. But, I don't want to have a strength 13. What if I want to play a strength 12 multi-class in the Barbarian? Because when you pick a class, and when you're doing character creation, you don't have to have a certain attribute to pick that class.
Yeah.
And then with multi-classing, you do. Now, I can understand both sides of the argument. One is, well, you're training to become that. you are already that, and so you have to meet certain prerequisites. It's like you're not going to be able to become a wizard if you're not smart enough to understand advanced runes or whatnot.
Yeah.
You're not going to be able to become a bard if you can't perform well.
Yeah. Those make sense.
Yeah, I understand that side of your argument, but also I want those limits gone. You know?
Yeah, and I think depending on the kind of game you're playing in, like either one of our games, if somebody wanted to multi-class into a wizard, but their intelligence was not a 13 and instead was a 9, we'd probably say no. But if it was a 12, sure.
Here's the thing, though. When it comes to like your abilities, most of those classes will like spellcasting is derived based off of an ability.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like I would allow you to become a wizard, multi-class into wizard at intelligence 9, because one, all your wizard spells
Are going to have a -1.
gonna have a -1. Well, plus your proficiency, but it's
Well, yeah.
it's not. You're not gonna be a powerful wizard.
You see, that's why I think I would probably be like, probably not, at least not right now, because I don't want you to weaken yourself. Because as the game progresses, at least the way I'm running mine, as the game progresses, it gets harder and harder and harder up until the point to where it's almost every fight you're like, holy crap, I can't believe we made it out of that. We really worked together well. And there's times in which, like multi-classing into a wizard with an intelligence of 9 and then getting that level up of a D6 health die, it's like, if you really want to do it and you can convince me that it's a good idea, then sure. But my first answer will be not right now. But if you can prove to me how you're going to use it and use it well, then all right.
I'll let my characters do stupid stuff to weaken them. Mostly because the game I'm running is I want to kill characters. I'll be honest with you. I have not killed enough characters in my DMing career, and I just need some more kills under my belt as a DM.
Be careful, because I could build one that's really hard to kill.
Listen, rocks fall.
Yeah, you got a point.
But multi-classing is one of those things where it's like you can welve it into a story, but multi-classing is really used for power gaming.
Yes.
I know I use multi-classing in my character as a story build of the character I'm currently running in your game. He started off as a sorcerer. One of his parents is a deity, doesn't know which one yet, and then moved around, went to some other gods, and was like, "Hey, let me work for you," and became a warlock under them.
Yeah.
And you can have some story aspect, but multi-classing, it's really good for power gaming.
Well, yeah, it's very good. For instance, there's somebody in my game right now who's playing a swashbuckler rogue and a bard. That combo is really good, especially when you go College of Swords with a swashbuckler rogue, to where you get the inspiration die and you add it to your AC. The Twilight Cleric with a rogue, it's really good. Maybe even a fighter sorcerer or a fighter warlock combo, to where
Eldritch Knight and Hexblade.
Yes. Something like a barbarian monk, to where you can
played one of those.
Well, you don't have to worry about your weapons. Your weapons are your fists.
Yeah, get that rage damage on the fist. That was fun. Whenever I multi-class, though, there's always a reason to it. I built that monk barbarian guy as more as like a brawler. Yep. He's in a fighting pit, and he didn't want to rely on these weapons, so he's just like, I got muscles. I'm just going to use these.
Well, see, I multi-classed once, and it was in your original game in which he was playing the Centaur. Phil Von T started off in life as a bard, and I think we started at level 3.
Yeah.
And I started realizing we didn't really have a good tank, and we didn't have a really strong healer. I mean, I was a bard.
Yeah.
I think we had another cleric. I think, I don't remember what subclass he was.
He was a homebrew subclass.
No, he was not he was a gunslinger. Yeah. Eric was playing a gunslinger.
But Alex was playing a cleric.
He was. But I realized that the healing potential of the party was not really there outside of, spending a ridiculous amount of gold on healing potions.
Yeah.
So I multi-classed in the cleric. Now, yes, it gave me the ability to wear heavy armor, and I took that ability. in the long run, it didn't really help that much because when a DM pays attention and you've got everybody else with low ACs, but you've got that one person who's got a 20 AC at third level or fourth level, you'd be like, okay, that to keep everything fair for everybody else, that's who I'm going to start throwing the saves at. That way I don't have to worry about them because by the time you get up to a +8 to hit, they're doing ridiculous amounts of damage. Maybe the guy with a good AC doesn't have a good of a dex.
Yeah. It's one of the downfalls of relying too much on your armor. Can't
Yeah.
run away from fireball.
Very true.
What is some other next customization thing? Is feats, really.
Yeah, that's really it.
Well, you could always get into the customization of like, if you go into this game and you're like, I want to play spellcaster, what type of spellcaster do you want to play?
Yeah, because you've got
There's-
3 or 4 different classes that specialize in that, and you've got probably four more that dip their toes into it.
You've got three different spellcasting methods. You got the wizard's way, you got the cleric and druid's way, and you got everybody else.
Yep.
Uh,
Even though I will say I'm a real big fan of the sorcerer. They're the only ones that can be like, hey, I'm in the middle of a fight, I'm out of spell slots. Spend a few sorcerer points and get a couple back.
That's right, but the wizards, like, we can kind of break those down to different spellcastings. Like the wizard, he doesn't like have a limit on the spells that he knows. He just has a limit on the spells he can prepare.
He is the glass cannon,
Yeah.
but he can also control the battlefield with stuff like slow and They can stop time once they get the high enough spell slot, and there's so much you can do, and they are famed for chain lightning and lightning bolt.
Yeah. Well, also don't forget like the wizard. Like the wizard can just add spells to his spell book.
Yeah.
It comes his like spells come from a spell book, where everyone else is like relying either on a deity or nature or just your regular magic in your own blood. The wizard's like has a book, and if he finds a scroll out in the wild,
He could copy it into the scroll.
yeah, of course he have to pay gold and a certain amount of supplies for it, but he can just add that to his repertoire.
Yep.
So if you have a wizard in party and you're a DM, sometimes you got to be careful with what scrolls you allow into a game, because that wizard will then have access to it, and he doesn't even have to be able to cast it to add it to his spell book.
He can save it for later.
Yeah, which is crazy, and he can change what spells are prepared, on a long
On
rest.
a whim.
On the long rest.
Well, that's what I mean by a whim. It's just like a cleric. They get in touch with their deity and they just swap spells around.
Yeah, and druid and cleric, on that note, they just know all their spells pretty much.
Yep.
They can only prepare a certain amount of them, but they have access to their entire spell list.
Well, and this is where subclasses come in heavily, and we're eventually going to go over these classes and their subclasses, but it's going to take a good bit of time. Clerics in particular get free spells with their subclasses, just
Yeah.
right off the bat.
Yeah,
Like, for instance, the War Domain Cleric, I played one for a year and a half on an online campaign, got Crusader's Mantle for free.
yeah,
Crusader's Mantle is a spell to where your allies within 30 feet for the certain amount of time that concentration, and I think it's a minute, will do an extra D4 of radiant damage, or maybe it's a D6, but it's giving that extra damage, and it's spells that are just, this.
yeah. It's pretty good. And I think druid. I think a lot of the subclasses for any kind of like full caster have like extra spells.
Yeah.
Add on to it. I'm not sure about wizard because I don't play wizard a whole lot.
I've never played one.
I played one time. Can't remember them. And then you got warlock, cleric, and bard, who you pick spells from their spell list, and those are the ones you know.
Yeah, pretty much.
Now, I'm not sure about bard, but I know that sorcerer and warlock, when they level up, they can change the spells that they know.
Yeah.
For like a same level. So if you want to get a different second level spell, you have to trade out with a second level spell that you know. Which, kind of a bummer.
Yeah,
But-
because there can be a long time between level ups.
Here's the thing, though. Sorcerers get sorcery points, so that, is a huge advantage.
Yeah.
You can modify your spell. Warlocks, they get their spells back on a short rest. Granted, they only have, like, a little bit of only a few spell slots. But they also can take these invocations to where they can just cast spells for free.
Well, even
Certain spells, though.
even getting out of the spellcasters and going into the more martial archetype classes like the fighter, the barbarian, um, the rogue, you can use any weapon if you wanted to. Now, the rogue, if you're wanting to use your sneak attack, you're going to have to use something with finesse. But there's a few different weapons with finesse. You can use ranged, you can use a rapier, you can use a short sword. Fighters, you could use a club all the way up to a maul. Same with a barbarian.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's unlimited access to an insane amount of customization to however you want to build your character, and the game rewards you for doing so if you do it right.
Yeah. Moving on to feats, and feats are an amazing thing because feats they can change a character so much.
Yeah, and I've seen some DMs give the ability to learn a feat to a character if they have spent the time to practice a certain thing.
Yeah, like downtime activity. They'd use downtime activity to learn the feat.
Yeah, and usually the way to do it is if you hit a certain level. I think whenever most classes hit 4th level,
Yeah.
they get you can add to your score modifiers, or you can choose to take a feat.
Yeah.
For the most part, that's the way to do it. But if you give, specifically for any DMs that may be listening, if you give the people that are playing in your campaign the option to, say, become a dual wielder because they are fighting with 2 weapons and they have been for the past 2 levels,
Mm-hmm.
they've practiced enough and be like, you know what, you've done this enough to where you have now mastered dual wielding. Add the dual wielding feat to your sheet. That way, if they wanted to up their strength or up their con because they're not really getting a good bit of health from their rolls, they can do so. It's just giving them more freedom, making them kind of feel better about their character overall in a way.
Yeah. Really, feats. That is a huge because there's so many feats from so many source materials. What are some of your favorite feats, or ones that stick out?
Crossbow expert.
Oh, that's a good one.
Crossbow expert, where you ignore the loading property. I believe that healer is good because if you run out of spell slots as a cleric or a bard or druid, whatever, even as a fighter, healer is good because if you can get your hands on a healer's kit, you can pretty much cast a 1st level cure wounds on somebody. It's a D6 instead of a D8, but it's a D6 plus 4.
Mm-hmm.
So you can save somebody from death. Anything to do with the armors, to where you get that added addition, you gain proficiency with it. Inspiring leader is nice. Now, heavy armor master is really good, where it'll increase your strength score while wearing heavy armor. Bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage from non-magical weapons is reduced by 3.
Yeah.
It's not halved, or you're not gaining resistance, but it's nice. There's also Sentinel, where
Sentinel. We've talked about that before.
yeah, somebody moves in, smack them, their speed becomes 0. When a creature within 5 feet of you makes an attack against your buddy, say no after they attack, and then you smack them yourself. Sharpshooter, and this is one that I'm taking at our level up, to where attacking at long range doesn't impose disadvantage, and the ranged weapons ignore half cover and 3 cover.
One that I used when I played Dragonborn Paladin was I think it was Great Weapon Master.
Yes, where you can re-roll your.
No, that wasn't it. It was the one where if you have like a great weapon, you can take a minus
Yes.
to hit.
-5 to the attack roll, and you add 10 to the attack damage.
Yeah, I loved that feat for him because you add that on to smite, and then he was a conquest paladin, so he could use channel divinity and get a +10 to hit. So it cancels out and then some.
And the only one left that I like really, because I usually play the frontline guys. I'm dipping my toe into being the back line in your game. It's tough.
Tough is good.
Tough, your hit point increases by an amount equal to twice your level when you gain this feat. Whenever you gain another level, your maximum increases by an additional 2 on top of whatever you roll and your con modifier.
Tough is one of those where you get it early.
Yeah. Now, I took it on our 12th level up. Well, when we hit 12th level in my online game. And at 12th level, from having good rolls and a 19 con on my cleric, I had 150 health.
Ridiculous. I'll tell you what another good one is. Tavern Brawler.
Yes.
Now, if you are not familiar with how powerful improvised weapons are, then you just ain't trying hard enough. Tavern Brawler, you have proficiency with improvised weapons.
You can pick up a bar stool and do good damage.
You become Jackie Chan when he is picking up benches and twirling them around and just
Yes.
smacking people with them.
Okay, now you got me wanting to play a drunken master monk.
Yeah, I'll tell you right there, Tavern Brawler. If you want to play a character, one of those gimmicky characters that are like just for funs, Tavern Brawler is a good one to take because you can play the entire game, not pick up a single sword, not pick up a single shield. Because not only that, it also gives you a D4 for your fists.
Yeah. Now, there's another one that's really good for those spellcasters we were talking about a little bit ago. The warlock, specifically with Eldritch Blast. The wizard and the sorcerer.
Spell
in
Sniper.
Spell Sniper, yes.
Oh yeah.
Where when you use a spell that requires
To
an
hit
attack roll,
an attack roll.
the spell's range is doubled. And then there's the spell now ignores, just like crossbow expert, sharpshooter, just like sharpshooter, where the ranged spell attacks ignore half and 3/4 cover. You learn a cantrip that requires an attack roll, and it doesn't say that it has to be a certain class. A wizard could take Eldritch Blast and choose okay, never mind. Yes.
You have to choose a cantrip from a spell list.
Yes.
You choose a spell list, so you technically could get any spell.
You could be a wizard with a ridiculously high intelligence and take Eldritch Blast.
Yeah. One of my favorite
And
things.
then it will be based off of your wizard level.
Here's the thing. I kind of want to get Spell Sniper and use it in your game because I'm a Warlock Sorcerer. I've already got extended spell. I just need to get an invocation to where I can double Eldritch Blast distance. So get Spell Sniper, double Eldritch Blast, which is, I think is 120.
Become a fantasy Chris Kyle.
Yeah. I'm going to be hitting from thousands of yards off with an Eldritch Blast.
Well, and when you're going into spellcasting like you do Spell Sniper, and that being that good, then you get into Warcaster, where it's kind of the opposite of that. Instead of being overly offensive, it's giving you better survivability.
Yeah.
As far as when it comes to being able to keep those concentration spells going. Something
Warcaster is good.
and those are like Shield of Faith, giving your ally or yourself +2 to your
And
AC.
then your Crusader's Mantle.
There's also Bulwark of Hope, where you're maxing healing. Any healing done is max.
Don't forget like some other basic ones that aren't.
Oh, Beacon of Hope, not Bulwark.
Fly,
Fly.
Haste, Enlarge or Reduce. Things of that nature. You have advantage on Constitution saving throws that are your concentration checks, pretty much.
And that's including the cleric's staple spell of Spiritual Guardians.
Oh yeah. Not only that, you can also perform the somatic components, where somatic components are you basically have to have your hands free to cast spells that require this. You can now perform them when you have weapons or a shield in your one or both your hands.
And here's the thing, Warcaster is really, really good for these full spellcasters that may not be sitting there with a long sword or anything like that, like the Sorcerer, Warlock, Wizard. And when you get the opportunity attack option, You don't have to attack. You can cast a spell.
which is ridiculous. That is absolutely ridiculous.
Now, something like Savage Attacker, being as simple as it is, this is once per turn. When you roll damage for a melee weapon attack, you can re-roll the weapon's damage die and use either total.
That's a good one. Mobile, you increase your speed by 10 feet.
That's extremely useful. And also, when you use the dash action, difficult terrain doesn't cost the extra movement on that turn.
I ever tell you about the sound breaking character that I made?
No.
I haven't played it, but I have crafted it. If I remember correctly, it's like 10th level, so it's doable. It's doable to get to that point to where you break the sound barrier.
Yep.
When I say he breaks the sound barrier, I mean he literally moves, if you were to calculate it out, faster than sound.
Yeah, because a lot of people look at D&D because it's turn-based. It's like hitting play and pause on a fight scene in a movie is play, pause, play, pause, play, pause, as people are taking their turns. But when you sit back, start the fight over, and press play, everything's happening all at the same time.
Yeah. However, there's no rules to like say that because this character could move up to the sound of speed, but he's not gonna break the sound barrier and do damage.
Well, moreover, how long does one round last?
One round lasts 6 seconds.
And one turn is probably about a second. That means that just about every race and just about every creature in the world of Dungeons and Dragons moves 30 feet in less than 2 seconds.
Well,
Or has the ability to
every
do so.
round is 6 seconds, and every turn is 6 seconds.
Okay, well, still, 6 seconds, 30 feet, that's pretty quick.
Yeah,
I get out of breath just by looking at the mailbox.
yeah, it is. Now, if I'm remembering correctly, maybe I can pull up the schematics for this sound breaking character. Okay, no, I think he was actually level 20, but he had like the haste spell cast on him. He had the boots of speed. He had mobile. He was a tabaxi. He was a rogue and a fighter and a monk.
Broken.
It is broken.
Because
You want
I
to
think
know?
we talked about it some during the fighter subclass stuff. Mobility is highly useful in Dungeons and Dragons.
You want to know how many feet he can move in a single turn?
How many?
Or how many feet he moves in 1 second?
How much?
1,166 feet.
It's free real estate.
It is ridiculous. Now, if you were to look at how many tiles or how many feet of movement he gets in game, it's 7,000.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Oh, back to the feats.
Back to the customization.
Resilient. To where you choose an ability score and you increase that score by 1, any of them, and then you gain proficiency in the saving throws using that chosen ability.
Resilient is good. It's
Because you're playing a wizard.
mhm.
You probably won't have that good of a constitution.
I don't know.
That means any kind of necrotic damage, just about all necrotic, just about all cold damage. If there's a save required, it's a constitution save. You could gain proficiency in that constitution save to where you got at least a +2 or 3 depending on your level.
Now here's a feat for my pyromancers, my cryomancers, my lightning sorcerers out there, my poison dealers, elemental adept.
Mm-hmm.
When you take this feat, if a creature has resistance to a certain type of damage, well, you pick a certain type of damage. Fire, cold, lightning, thunder, poison, acid, pretty much the basic elemental damages. If you target someone who has resistance, you ignore that resistance. I mean, that's just, it's good. That's for my people who want to burn down a red dragon.
Yeah. And even going into the survivability of it, durable, where you increase your con modifier by 1 to a maximum of 20, but when you roll a hit die on your short rest to regain hit points, the minimum number of hit points that you can regain from the roll equals twice your constitution modifier, and if that con is a +4, you're getting at least 8
That's for,
with every roll.
let's set a scene with that. You got like a fighter with adorable feet. Everyone's taking a short rest in the dungeon. Everyone's like, man, this short rest, I gotta use all my hit dice.
He
Fighters,
uses 2.
yeah. I just imagine you set the scene and you describe it everyone like gets up from their rest here in the dungeon. Fire's already waiting for you with a cigarette in mouth, like, what took you so long?
Yeah. So I sat down for 5 minutes. My back's not hurting no more. But even there's Dungeon Delver, and this is really good for any kind of sneaky type, ranger, rogue, maybe even a warlock, depending on the subclasses that you choose. You're alert to hidden traps and secret doors. You have advantage on wisdom and intelligence checks to detect those. You have advantage on saving throws to avoid or resist traps. You have the resistance to the damage dealt by traps. And you can search for traps while traveling at a normal pace instead of traveling at half speed.
I'm just wondering,
You can literally jog through a dungeon and spot traps.
it's crazy the resistance to trap damage.
Yes.
Because when you look at it, like, not from a mechanical standpoint, but from a story perspective standpoint, how does that work? It's just, I'm just imagining the party, same party, you got the fighter that's just like, recovered from his durable feat and he's fine.
He knows the trap. He's familiarized himself or herself with the trap enough to where he knows how to move their body to the point to where the armor that they're wearing is maximized.
I don't like that.
Except for noxious gas. It doesn't make any sense for that. They just pull their cloth up over their mouth.
I like to imagine, though, it's just the rogue gets targeted with this trap, gets impaled by like a spike from the wall, and he's like, oh, I recognize this brand of spike. I see the serial number right there. That's not bad, guys. It's not bad at all.
It's a Harbor Freight spike.
Yeah, they got this from Lowe's.
Going back into the feats, defensive duelist. Now, it requires a dex 13 or higher, and that can always be up to DM discretion. But usually with feats, it's like, yeah, you kind of want to have those numbers. But when you're wielding a finesse weapon in which you're proficient and another creature hits you with a melee attack, you can use your reaction to add your proficiency bonus to your AC for that attack, potentially causing the attack to miss you. Now, up at, say, 7th and 8th level, when your proficiency bonus is +3, that's 3 AC that you're getting.
That's a lot of difference.
That's a big difference. Because me and Roger, who is somebody we're going to have on the show in the future, we're talking about how big of a difference 1 AC could make.
Oh, yeah. Game changer. Here's another game
It's
changer.
huge.
Alert.
Yes.
+5 bonus to initiative. So you're more likely to go first in combat. That's great and all.
Much less likely to go last.
You can't be surprised while you are conscious. Do you realize how insane that is? Also, other creatures don't gain advantage on attack rolls against you as a result of being unseen by you.
It takes the viability of the DM using anything like a rogue or an assassin out against your character.
Yeah, ambushes have no effect on you. You saw it coming from miles away.
And if you're one of those people that plays your character to where they're getting along with the rest of the party, traveling down the road, there's a group of bandits to our right, be ready.
It's crazy. Tell you what, Charger is another good one. When you use your dash action, you can use a bonus action to make 1 melee weapon attack or to shove a creature. If you move at least 10 feet in a straight line immediately before taking this bonus action, you either gain a +5 bonus to your attack's damage roll, if you choose to make a melee attack, or push the target up to 10 feet away from you, if you choose to shove and succeed.
And that's extremely useful, especially, I think we were talking about it when we were going over the Psy Warrior subclass for the fighter, in that if you're fighting next to a cliff, just push them off.
Push them off.
Now, there was another feat that I was thinking of, but I cannot remember the name of it to save my life.
What did it do? Do you remember?
It gave, if you're holding a weapon in one hand and not a weapon in another hand, you get a +2 to that damage, to the damage roll.
That's a fighting style.
Ah.
Yeah. Fighters get that.
It's easy to get confused when you're talking about this kind of stuff, and I've been playing for 4 years.
Yeah.
So if you're getting into Dungeons and Dragons and you're having trouble understanding it, don't worry. You're not the first, and you will not be the last to get confused.
That can bring us up to 2 interesting points. One, how much customization is too much customization? And second, why are we doing classes if we could just do like skill trees and pick and choose what we want to build our character?
Well,
On the first point, how much customization is too much?
I think customization gets to the point to where it's too much when you find yourself foregoing what you originally intended the character to be.
I'll tell you when I think customization is too much. You ever play Borderlands?
Yes.
You know how many, they got millions of guns
Mm-hmm.
and they all do different things. If I'm like spending 30 minutes trying to pick out like a feat,
It's too much.
it's too much. If I'm like comparing two very similar feats but only slightly different, I think it's just too much, you know?
And that's where it plays into what's going to be best for your character. Because this is the hard part about Dungeons and Dragons. Is that, and it's the way I've explained it to my group, and I think I said it in front of you, and I told my wife this because she started playing not too long ago, that it is hard to get into the point of role play or playing a character and not playing yourself. And it's weird to explain, but after about 3 months in that year and a half long campaign that I played in, I finally decided, you know what? I'm going to take the back seat. I've played this guy for 3 months, and I've built him from the ground up. Why don't I let Aziel be Aziel, and I'll watch
Yeah.
and see where it goes. Instead of doing stuff that I would do, think, what would my character do? And that's that makes it a little easier to try and pinpoint what kind of feats you want. It doesn't so much limit your customization because at the end of the day, you could always say, well, you know what? I kind of want heavy armor mastery, even though I'm a rogue.
Yeah.
Because
It doesn't limit it, it kind of guides it.
yeah,
And now,
and being guided through this is hard to pass up because, like I said, it's extremely easy that if you're not careful to get confused. That's why it's always great to sit down, take the time to go over it. And if you know somebody that's into the game already, hash it out with them. Come up with ideas. Say, hey, you know what? I'm not really understanding this. Can you help me?
there are plenty of material out. There's plenty of material out there to help you. I mean, I could go on YouTube right now and look up Dungeons and Dragons feats ranked, and there will be 5 different videos telling me about them.
Yeah. And now we're here, and we have the ability to message back and speak to anybody that might have a question. Now, we're not always going to have the answer, but I can say that we will look it up.
We won't have answers, but we will have opinions.
Yes. Because that's mainly what all this has been.
This really is just a bunch of opinions. And on a note of that, don't take our word as gospel or the hard stone truth. At the end of the day, we still don't know what we're doing.
Yeah, because me and Jeremiah have completely different play styles.
Mm-hmm.
I am really heavy into playing the character, and I want to see that character develop throughout a story. He really likes being combat heavy.
I love combat. I love D&D combat. If I could play D&D combat, like, I just can't explain to you how much I love it.
And I'm more into the heart-wrenching moments of, you know what, my character's finally reached his breaking point and he's going to break down and sob.
I love the mechanics of D&D. It's a math game to me sometimes.
Yeah.
And there'd be sometimes I'm not even like trying to. Now I do enjoy a good backstory and role playing, but at the end of the day, I'm like, those numbers, they need to be crunching right.
Do you have any idea of the kind of campaign we could plan if we were to co-DM something with my storytelling and your combat?
It'd be ridiculous. Because I'll tell you what, I can run a good combat. Now that Vanderhob was an exception.
Well,
We were testing something, okay?
yeah, and it didn't work out.
It didn't.
And
work
I can
out.
write one heck of a story.
Yeah. Now
And I'm not tooting my own horn, I've been told.
I will say, like, you know, on the second point, you know, we have these classes, races, and like all that. Why are we still doing classes? Why are we saying, you know, here's a class, you level up and you become this eventually, instead of like, here's a bunch of things that you can become, you just pick them at certain times.
Well, I think everybody needs specifically the new players.
Yeah.
Now, if we were just going to do skill trees, that'd be great for the seasoned players because they'd already know what all would fit.
Yeah.
But for these new players, in which we're trying to sell, the whole reason we're trying to do this is to try and sell people into playing Dungeons and Dragons. Maybe you think it's too much of a nerd or geek thing, and just try it out.
No, I'm just the reason I'm
But-
here is I'm trying to have conversation about D&D, and it's like, not just wasting my time.
Oh, that's a good point too.
But,
But it's giving the base to build on is to go over to class and the subclass and be like, hey, you know what? Maybe even the seasoned player hasn't read the fighter class in a while.
yeah,
Because I was surprised at what all could do, because usually I had no interest in playing a fighter.
yeah, it's crazy. And here's the thing, Dungeons and Dragons is not the only tabletop RPG out there.
No.
The Mutants and Masterminds, I think its latest edition involves like skill trees and like
Mhm.
picking your feet, so you can pretty much be whatever you want.
And Pathfinder's the same way, and I think Pathfinder has more customization than Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah. At the end of the day, when it comes to customizing, it's how you want it.
Yep. You could go into Dungeons and Dragons and be anything you wanted to be,
Mm-hmm.
which for some people like myself who use it as an escape from reality is fantastic. Me personally, I don't get to be a hero every day, even though, sometimes I'd like to be, save that life or defend that person. I don't get to do that on a daily basis, but I get to do it every Saturday.
Yeah, and I don't get to con people every day, but I get to do it every Saturday.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why we play Dungeons and Dragons.
We get to be who we want to be, and
A
that's the
hero
beauty.
and a thief.
Now, hold on.